Welcome to the show, AfterBuzzers. I'm holding it down today for Chad Loves Michelle, Season 1, Episode 7. Let's talk about sex. Chad and Michelle are almost done with therapy. We meet the moms, and we talk about sex, baby. Let's go.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey, I'm always down to talk about sex, so this should be a fun episode right here today. We meet the moms. It gets a little awkward and stressful, but that's nothing a little, a hit in the sack won't cure right there. So we're gonna get right into this episode. I'm your host, Miss Conversation Piece. I'm holding it down. Jesse J and Drew couldn't come in today, so I'll be talking about sex by myself. That's what usually happens lately anyway. So let's get right into Michelle and George. They catch up, and she fills him in on what happened in South Carolina. So apparently they had a great trip. They are on the right track. She's feeling good about it. And now they get to talk about sex and therapy, and she's so excited. So George, he comes in. They have an open door policy. He comes right in the door. She doesn't even lock the doors around her house. And so basically, he's just telling her how sex will take them to another level. Of course, she already knows that. She actually basically told George that they connected in South Carolina and that, she's ready to walk down the aisle. Even though they haven't set a date per se, she feels like they're close to that because now it's becoming a real thing. They're getting ready to meet the moms. The moms are coming in town. Not only Chad's mom, but Michelle's mom. So I think when the parents are getting involved, it's definitely a little more serious. However, I feel like before you get married and engaged, I feel like you should be meeting the parents beforehand. I don't know what some of you guys think in the chat. If you believe that you should meet the parents before you get engaged, or you think it's okay to meet after, because if you want your parents and the whole family to mesh well together, do we need to do that before the engagement? Because I feel like that will create a whole bunch of conflict and tension that is unnecessary because everyone may not get along. I don't know. But George tells her, basically that she shouldn't feel weird about their first time and that she should actually get Chad to practice. Now, I don't know how you can practice having sex without actually doing it. I did look up a few ways online because I was curious to know, to be honest with you guys, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I'm celibate. It's been 2 years for me. It hasn't been 20 years like Chad, but 2 years is long enough. So I kind of know what they're going through right now. However, I looked up online some of the ways that you can get ready for sex if it's been a long time or if you just never had sex before. So one, they tell you to masturbate. I don't know if that's the first step you want to go right into, but that was one of the recommendations. To focus on foreplay. So when you get ready to actually do the act and you're ready to go, because the man can, I guess, finish a little too early. They want you guys to focus on foreplay because you have to get the woman in the mood. You have to get her ready. And because it's probably going to be 30 seconds to 2 minutes, you want to get all of that taken care of through foreplay. And then the next recommendation is to use toys. So that's just something that, I looked up online and was a little curious about for my own information. So then after Michelle meets up with George, her friend, we get into Chad's meeting with his friend, and he gets right into it. He's super excited about the next therapy session where they're going to be able to talk about sex. And what we learned from this meeting with his friend is that Chad hasn't had sex in a very long time. And this is very interesting to me because usually men can't can't think without their little head. So it's very interesting to me that he's waited over 20 years to have sex. Now, this means that his religion, his spirituality is very important to him. And it's kind of crazy because like I said, whether you're religious or not, or spiritual or not, you're still a man. So for him to be able to control himself for that amount of time, that is commendable to me. And I feel like that's definitely a great way to, like he said, get to know someone. So by taking the time to not focus on lusting after someone or physically loving someone, you get a chance to actually get to know the person and see if this is what you want to do, if you actually want to get married. And I feel like this is where they are. Season 7, they're able to see, where they're going to be headed once they take a trip down the aisle. And I see this is kind of like a pivotal point where we get to see that they may not even be compatible because they can't even sit down and talk about something as small as sex, and they're almost 40 years old. So Chad isn't nervous at all that he won't be able to satisfy Michelle. He thinks he'll be able to score for sure, and his main thing is making sure that Michelle is satisfied. So I think that's what he's most concerned about. He says he knows what to do, but hey, it's been 20 years. I don't know where he's learning. He's asking his friends for advice. He seems to be asking friends for advice every episode, so I don't really know if he knows what to do. But they get into the intimate talk during counseling. And here, Dr. Thema, she basically gets right in there and basically cuts through their whole awkwardness that they're feeling about something they haven't even brought up. She's asking about the decision they made to be abstinent with each other, and they're basically saying they haven't even talked about it. And one thing that Chad did say to Michelle early on in the relationship was that sex is not an option, and that took a whole pressure off of her, because usually on the women it's a very pressured situation where you're kind of like the one who has to turn down the advances of the man, because the men, like I said, are usually very physically attracted to women, and they feel like this is the only way to connect and bond. And so the fact that they're using this time to get to know one another without physically touching, I think that shows how serious and committed they are to wanting a long-term relationship. However, that doesn't mean that you're compatible with that person. And that's another thing they're concerned about is, taking a test drive and are they going to enjoy it, and what is it going to be like after. And so the doctor, she gets right into where it may be awkward the first time, but every time is not the same. So we all know our first time was probably a little awkward. We probably didn't enjoy it. Sometimes people have horrible experiences, and that can determine how they are sexually in the future, unless they eventually have a pleasurable experience. We find out that Michelle, her first experience was horrible. Chad's first experience was when he was 17. Michelle was 18 when she had hers. But as grown people now, they really have not been exploring their sexual side. And I don't know how important that is in a marriage. For me, I think it's very important to be sexually compatible, because this is somebody you have to be with the rest of your life. You don't want them cheating on you. So how can you build that bond and do it the right way, which we're all taught, waiting for sex and being abstinent is the right way. And then deciding, okay, this is somebody I have to be with. How are we going to make this work sexually if we're not compatible? So I can kind of see where they're apprehensive and why anyone would be apprehensive in waiting, but they actually have some friends that have gone through the same thing. Devon Franklin and Megan, they meet up at lunch, And so they tell them about their experience doing the wait. They've had a very successful marriage. They've been married, not exactly how long, but it seems to be a happy marriage. They seem to be, speaking about, their wait. They wrote a book about it. They've been doing panels and book tours and things of that nature, talking about waiting and how it strengthened their relationship. So were the perfect couple to give, I think, Michelle and Chad some advice on that. Michelle says growing up in church, you don't get to talk about sex and you don't really talk about mental health. And so this show and this therapy that she's having with Chad, I feel like is a great outlet for her to be able to get through and push through the issues that she's having. And even if we've learned that they've broken up, they don't make it down the aisle, it's still a learning experience. They're still going to have a lot of love for each other. I think they still respect each other greatly and are friends with each other. I don't know if they're going to be close and, keep tabs on each other or even get back together, but I think this is a way for them to really get to know themselves. And I think they should have taken therapy separately. I hope they're doing that now, because getting to know yourself, and especially if you haven't connected with someone in a lot of years, like 20 years, if you haven't connected with someone intimately, that's something that can definitely be scary and definitely be an awkward experience, and something that you need to talk about and get advice about. Let's see. So basically what I want to talk about is having open communication with parents. And I feel like the reason that it can be so awkward for them to have these conversations, even as they're 40 years old and they're in therapy and they're about to get married, the reason that it's so awkward to have these conversations is because at a young age, our parents are kind of hesitant to have these conversations with us. They're just quick to say, hey, you better not have sex, or you better not come up pregnant, and that's that on that. And it kind of scares us into oh my God, I'm having these, feelings. I don't know what to do with them. And, I think that's where a lot of kids get mixed up, instead of having a good, honest conversation about, okay, this is how me and your dad met, or, this is what happened to the relationship, whether, we're still together or we're broken up. This is how we met. This is how your dad swept me off my feet. Parents aren't really having those conversations with kids. And I feel like that trickles down into your adulthood and how comfortable you are speaking on your sexuality. I definitely agree with having open communications with parents about sex. And, one thing that I thought was interesting is Michelle saying that she never heard her mom say, I love you. And, as a child, we need that encouragement. We need that reassurance. We need that love and support. And we need all of that to feel healthy in our relationships, because when you're not able to express that to your husband or express that to your boyfriend, that's where the communication problem comes in there. So that may be one of the reasons Michelle has issues communicating with Chad, because I feel like sometimes she really does cut into him, or she'll say something that can be very, vindictive. And so in the midst of all the arguments that they're having and having access to therapy at the same time, they're still not able to come to a resolution. And I feel like this is where we're seeing the disconnect in their relationship each and every week. Another thing Michelle says, she never even really hugged her mom, and that her and her siblings would try to huddle with her mom and, try to show her love. And, her mom showed love by paying the bills and making sure they had food and clothes on their back. And that's the way that her mom showed love. And I feel like a lot of parents do that. They're like, okay, I work 40, 50 hours a week. I make sure you have food on the table, and I make sure you're taken care of. And you know I love you versus like actually saying it and actually expressing it. And that's the same thing, like I said, that can trickle down and go into your relationships as an adult. When you get married or in a relationship and your husband is out providing, and then he gets home and you're like, oh, well, you know, I need attention. And he's like, well, I just went to work for 10 hours so you can go shopping. So, you know, I feel like that's a lot of relationship disconnects that happens in the real world. And it stems from, you know, the way that your parents deal with you and show you love. So, it's definitely important to know that money and, you know, all those things that don't matter materialistically, it doesn't equal love. However, people have different ways to show love. And I think communication is definitely the number one way that we can all like get our feelings out and feel appreciated. One of the things that the doctor gave Chad and Michelle while they were in therapy was a little homework to ask their parents how did their views on love change over time. So as you get older, you know, you get wiser, you experience things, you experience you know, different relationships, you experience friendships. And so I feel like Michelle's mom gave some really good advice to Michelle. And I don't think Michelle was even ready. Michelle, she was very shy and awkward whenever the topic of sex came up. And I think Chad was kind of side-eyeing her like, look, when we do it, I expect, you know, it to be going down. And I don't know if Michelle is like, oh my God, I don't want to look at it. And I feel like, you know, Chad is looking like, I'm trying to get it in. Michelle is like, oh my God. So I saw a little, not just awkwardness, but just a little like side eye from Chad there. I don't know. I think a man, and since we're talking about sex, we might as well get right into it. I feel like a man wants his woman to be very sexually active in the bedroom and, you know, a lady in the streets. So I feel like Michelle needs to not only go to therapy and talk to her mom, but she needs to talk to some kind of Beyonce or somebody that can give her some tips on how to twerk it, how to pop it, like drop it. You know, you got to do some things to keep your man not only, you know, attracted to you, but satisfied. And, you know, you're in it for the long haul when you're married. So we don't want to just be in there boring and, you know, playing gospel music. We need to hear some, you know, love songs. I don't know how this works with the whole like religious first lady situation, but I don't know. Once you're married, I think you're able to do whatever it is you need to do to make sure each other are happy. And so it seems like everything's going good so far. The moms get along pretty well. It wasn't any drama there. They didn't want them to meet on the day of the wedding, which is very smart. We don't want any, you know, thing clashing. So they go to lunch, they talk about sex. And Michelle's mom, she basically says that she didn't know anything as a young woman and that she was basically learning as she went. And when you're a child or a young lady and you're married and you're raising children and you don't really know what to do, that can definitely, you know, leave everything up in the air where you know, there's room for error, there's room for mistake. And a lot of times, you know, people don't go to therapy and don't have outlets where they can, you know, express, you know, what's going on in their household. And a lot of people feel like they don't need to express what's going on in their household. They want to keep it a secret. And so one thing I do see as a breakthrough in this episode is the fact that Michelle is able to talk to her mom about things that she's never brought up before ever in life. And these are some things as a woman that you need to know. And we have a few people in our group chat right now. Team Michelle, our Belle, is in the building. Learning love languages is very important. And you're so correct about that, because people could be trying to show you love and you may be rejecting it because you don't understand it. And having an open and honest conversation with someone that you are planning to spend your life with is totally important to kind of get that understanding, as well as having someone to mediate it, whether it's a therapist or a pastor or whoever that you trust, like a friend like Devon Franklin and Megan Good. Having people like that you can call on and have honest conversations with can definitely help out when you're not seeing eye to eye, not necessarily having problems, but, you know, just want to understand each other a little better. So let's get back into the wedding dress shopping. Now, this is every girl's dream. The mom, she wants to be there, and Chad moms gets to tag along as well, which I think was an awesome experience. She tries on a few different gowns. They were nice looking. Chad definitely said he wanted something form-fitting so he could see her figure. You know, he wants to see how beautiful she is walking down the aisle, as any man would. And I think Michelle picked out some pretty nice pieces. I would say the third dress was my favorite of all. I definitely see her getting something custom, though. You know, this was just, I think, something that she wanted to do with her mom and actually show her around, you know, the dress shopping experience. But I feel like she'll probably get something custom made because she had a lot of ideas of exactly what she wanted. So on her one-on-one time with mom, she finds out that her mom, you know, like I said earlier, her mom was learning as she was going along in life, and she had a lot of anger issues because, you know, she married her dad, and you kind of resent your partner when they don't understand your love language. And so her mom was giving her that advice, and I think that was a kind of a breakthrough for her. And she also learned how her mom was able to pick up the fact that you can't use your words to cut someone, because once you say something, you can't take that back. And even after you apologize, you have already said those words and they could still sit with that person. And she said that's one thing that she wished she would have thought about while she was young and in love. And I think that's important for Michelle, because we've seen in previous episodes where Michelle has said some things to Chad that weren't so nice. So she definitely has a tongue and can say some things that aren't so cool. So learning that about herself is very important. And then we get to Chad and his mom. He sits down and, you know, Chad's mom seems to like Michelle. However, she feels like Chad is such a giver and such a provider and caretaker that Michelle is dumping all this emotional baggage onto him, and she might be right. However, she feels that Chad may need to have a conversation with Michelle on this subject. And also in this talk, Chad learns about his mom and dad's relationship, how they ended up getting a divorce, and you know, he's getting a breakthrough as well. He's learning about his dad being a provider, however, he was not emotionally there. So you can do a lot for a person, and like you said, your love language is to give, make sure they're taken care of. But, you know, sometimes somebody needs someone to talk to or somebody to listen and just, you know, say everything's going to be all right versus, okay, here's my paycheck. So we're learning different ways that Chad has grown up and Michelle has grown up. And, you know, There's no right or wrong way, but we're pushing through it through therapy. We got one more session left. And so next episode, we'll see what happens. We're going to get right into our news and gossip.
AfterBuzz TV News.
All right, breaking news. So Michelle, she was on Broadway. She's been working. She's back at work after her bout with depression. However, on doctor's order, Michelle has been told to step away from the Broadway musical. She's been taking a leave of absence as her role as Urzuli on Once on This Island. Per her doctors, we don't know exactly what's going on. We don't know if it's still a bout with depression or what, but her understudy is taking over. We hope Michelle can get back to work. We want to see her out there thriving and doing her thing. Get well, Michelle. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for our news and gossip. Not much going on there. Get well, Michelle, okay? And we're going to get right into predictions.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
So, I predict that Chad will definitely take his mom's advice and have a conversation with Michelle about this emotional dumping that she does sometimes. I think that's going to be like the breaking point between him and Michelle, because we already know that they've broken up. And, I just feel like Chad's a mama's boy, and he's going to listen to his mom and have a conversation. And I feel like sometimes he doesn't know how to necessarily speak on things or communicate things. And I think that will be part of the problem and one of the reasons they are deciding to split up. So you guys stick with me one more time. Next week, we're going to end the season of Chad Loves Michelle. I'm your host, Miss Conversation Piece. You can catch me on the panel for Real Housewives of Atlanta. You can also catch me on Instagram at Conversation Piece or Twitter, MISS Convo Piece. It's been fun. You have a great night.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.